Hi, I'm Lise Colucci, and I'm a life coach at queenbeing.com, where we help you to discover, understand, and overcome narcissistic abuse in toxic relationships. Hello. Hello to everybody who's here. Sorry. Hi, Tam. Dude, trust me, Lumen and James. Hello. So today we are talking about cognitive dissonance and how it relates to healing. So let's get started. Okay. All right. So let's get started. So cognitive dissonance, what is it? When you have, hey Jen, when you have been in a toxic relationship, you have been trauma bonded, right? So part of trauma bonding, part of the experience is what we experience on our end, which is a cognitive dissonance. It's when your head knows something and your heart is saying something else. So basically you have two voices going on in your head, right? The one that's telling you, but I feel this, I still believe they can heal, they can get better. If only I did that. It's the doubt that we feel mixed with a belief that the abuser is actually a good person or not as abusive as we think they are, or we don't even maybe notice the abuse after it's happened, because of this. Yet your head knows exactly what happened. Your logic and your brain, what happened. It's like you can't separate in your head the difference between the logic of knowing what happened and knowing you can list all the abuses out and you can see them right in front of you. And then another piece of you still has some glimmer of hope, some belief in that person that they can change, or that they really weren't that bad, or that you're not seeing it for what it is. You basically feel one way and do the opposite, or think one way and feel the opposite. It is having two opinions at one time that are conflicting. It's really frustrating and conflicting and horrible place to be, because a lot of times what happens, and the danger of it, is that is what makes you vulnerable to a Hoover. That's what keeps you trapped in relationships with toxic people, because you're listening to the part of yourself that's yelling the loudest, right? And what's that? It's our feelings. Our feelings are saying, but I need this person, but I love them. But they're okay. They're really not as bad as I think they are. Whatever your personal view is. And some of the things that it can cause for you to feel, it can cause you to feel shame. It can cause you to feel guilt. It can create avoidance and rationalization. So people who have been abused tend to avoid what's happened. With parts of themselves, avoid it. We may hear it. You may hear it. You may, like if someone says you're being abused, you may hear the words, but there's a part of you that isn't listening. That's the part that is stuck in cognitive dissonance. And we are, people will start rationalizing the behaviors of the abusers, taking on the abuser's abuse as their own problem, feeling. And then what happens is, right from wrong. You're being treated wrong, but you're kind of actively engaging in it in a way. It feels like you have no choice, but part of you knows there is a choice, and then a massive amount of guilt and self-shame starts to happen. So you can see it's not a very good place to be in. So what can we do about it? I'm going to go and read some of what you guys are saying, and then I'll get to the what can we do about it. Let's see. Let's go to the top. Okay. What are some examples? That was me. Can cognitive dissonance be different between enabler and narc parents? Well, it's the state of cognitive dissonance. I'm sure the way it looks can look different. Yeah. But it's the state of confusion of your head and your heart, really. Hello, Darla. Let's see. Not believing the red flags, dude, trust me, says. Yes, that's it's like even if you believe it, you don't believe it. You know what I mean? It's the difference between knowing and experiencing. And it's like we won't let ourselves experience what has happened. We know what happened. We were in it in the moment, but after the fact, it's like you won't let yourself understand it on that level, even if you know, and then you don't believe the red flags the same way. James says it's that numb feeling. Partially, yeah, because we dissociate and it keeps us stuck there, right? So, and then we'll come to that when we talk about, okay. You continue to invest into a relationship when the other person clearly is not, says Dude, Trust Me. That's exactly what happens. Jen Archer says, yep, then the fog comes in. Yep. Hello, Jay. Hi, Steve. Let's see. Whatever I tell myself to make it better. Denial. I've lived there once for decades. It's right. It's yeah. Okay. Dude, Trust Me says, most stories typically portray unrequited love as romantic. I was thinking about this the other day, how absolutely horribly toxic that thought is. I mean, that concept is, right? And we should try to win over someone else who is not interested in us. Isn't that weird? Yeah, I was funny because I was literally thinking of that the other day. And Jen Archer says, cognitive dissonance, brain not understanding what I know is wrong, but watching with my own doubt. Tam says, so if you're healed, but sometimes wonder if you were too harsh on them. Aha, good question. Even if you can get out of it, are you still struggling with cognitive dissonance? Yes, I would say, I mean, as soon as you said that first part of the sentence, yeah, I would say, yes, that is a form of cognitive dissonance. Everybody has cognitive dissonance in their life. When we have it from a toxic abuse, it's tied in with the trauma bonds often, usually. So, I mean, it can happen. Oh gosh, I would have to, I can't think of examples off the top of my head, but it can happen just kind of in everyday life. And it's not a condition. It's sort of a byproduct of beliefs. It's a byproduct of our belief systems. And belief systems are created from toxic abuse and through trauma bonding. It's the patterning and the control, right, of the situation that creates the beliefs. So does that make sense, Tam? So yes, I mean, it's still tied in with some belief perhaps for you somewhere there. That's when we go, what do we think and what do we feel about this? What do we go? Hello, Frankendoll. Let's see. You know what? Frankendoll says the hopeless romantic, overly romantic. I think you can still be a hopeless romantic and apply some wisdom and experience and see what comes out of it. You may be a very wise romantic. It's okay to be what we are, but at the same time, try to do it safely. Okay. Loving to be in love with love. Yeah. All right. So what can we do about the cognitive dissonance? Let's get to that. What has helped you guys when you felt it, when you knew you were in the middle of it and you felt like you couldn't stop the thoughts anyway? What has helped you? Tam is saying, yes, it does. That's one thing, especially when feeling emotionally vulnerable, that pops up. Like when mother-in-law passed, I began to question about my narc mom, even though I knew it would be 10 times worse. Yeah. And you had a trigger from the grief, right? So it makes sense when we're vulnerable that the old beliefs come up, right? The old beliefs pop up and then we got to work our way through it. You know, healing is in layers and it's not linear. It's very wiggly line. So things pop us as we live our life. Okay, so what snaps you out of cognitive dissonance? Jen says 4 corners of the room. Perfume helps to snap me out. Dude, Trust Me says talk therapy. Sharing the red flags and watching others be shocked that I wasn't giving up despite the narc's toxic behavior. Isn't that the best when you tell a story and people's faces are astounded and it's a form of validation. So that's an important one. One of the things I was going to talk about was seek validation, where you can find it where it's actually validation. Validate yourself, of course, but talking with a therapist, talking with a coach, that's I have to say a lot of times what people need when they come and seek help is the validation that what really happened to them so they can work their own way out of this. But it is fascinating when you do see people's expressions. And I like the way you worded that, watching others be shocked that I wasn't giving up despite the toxic behavior. Yeah, if you can really take that in, like, oh my gosh, this isn't normal. I put up with what? Right. Okay. Tam says, focusing on the moment helps. I try to do something that grounds me in the moment, cleaning and walking. And Jen says, I love a meditation in times of deep triggers and like as much as possible. Okay, so let's talk about some other stuff. So number one, if you are in the phase where you feel like you can't let go and you can't move on, or you're in the, but I'm still seeing all these great qualities about this person. It's only sometimes that they're this way. I can manage it. I can fix it. If you're in that stage and you're deeply into cognitive dissonance and you're deeply trauma bonded, start listing the abuses in a journal. I would create a special place, a journal just for this, and call it something like logical facts, something that is factual. Keep your feelings. You could put your feelings in it, but make sure they are related specifically to how you felt when the abuse happened, not to how you're feeling about wanting to go back. Keep it topic oriented. Keep it all related to abuse. And on the first page, list the abuses. It may take several pages, obviously, but on the first few pages, just start listing the things that they did to abuse you and the ways they hurt you. Your logic has to override your heart when you have cognitive dissonance. It really is the way out. I wish there was an easier way, but it's the emotion that's screaming the loudest is the one getting any attention, and the one saying go back, they're okay, they mean it this time, is screaming louder. So you have to create something that kind of shocks you back into reality, that no, this is the reality of it. Know what they are and don't lie to yourself about it. Part of cognitive dissonance, as I said, is rationalization and avoidance. So if we're avoiding the truth of who a person is, when they are telling us repeatedly over and over and over from the cycle that they're showing us with the devaluing in the love bomb devalue cycle we talked about that yesterday. So you can go watch that one next if you need to. But that is the reality of how they relate in relationships. Okay, that is not going to change. And we have to stop avoiding and rationalizing. Understanding that you're doing it I think is useful. Like, as you're doing it, oh my gosh, I'm totally rationalizing this. Again, using your logical part of your brain, get that firing so that it can take over a little bit, because you need all the help you can get. Okay, I'm going to read some of these and then we'll go to the next point I had. Okay. They are terrible, says Steve. They sure are. Lise, I had a painful I had a painful emotional flashback from something that happened last year. I was triggered when I was sorting out my travel items, and an item I saw brought me straight back to that time. What did you do? What happened when you got triggered? Talk to me more, and let's figure out some coping skills that might help you next time they happen. These triggers come up, and using them, basically you can use them to help you heal a little piece more and more, and you can use the energy that you get from them to actually pack really effectively. But if it gets you to the point where you're shut down, then that's a problem. So what happened when that happened? Jen Archer says, I can't stand that person, that toxic person, but I forgiven. That's where I am. Well, that's great. And forgiveness is a whole nother topic, right? That's, yeah. Let's see. Oh, it jumped. Okay. Frankendahl says, I started journaling, and taking photos of the abuse. Good. And Jen says, I have to ask myself sometimes, does this sound right? Exactly. You have to question, wait a minute, does this sound right? What am I actually saying here to myself? And come back to a more, the part of your brain that's rational and reasoning. Jack Lemon says, I'm being browbeaten by my enabler father with the concept of empathy. He doesn't seem to understand some people don't deserve the benefit of the doubt, strong cognitive dissonance. Okay, you can't make him see anything. Let's just say that. Your responsibility is yourself and your own healing. You are not responsible for your family's or anybody else's understanding, learning, awareness. He's going to do what he's going to do. He has enough information now from you, I am sure, to start seeking his own help if he wants it. But obviously he is deeply enmeshed and he is going to stay where he is as he is. So I would say the more you engage with it, the harder it is. I wouldn't engage at all. I would just talk about the weather. I mean, honestly, I would keep things so surface that it didn't get to me. And then I'd have self-care for when I wasn't around, when I left them, to kind of brush it off. Does that make sense? Okay. Frank Adele says, I would look back at the violence and think, well, maybe it wasn't so bad, but it was volatile. Exactly. Isn't that the weirdest experience? We are not stupid people, right? We know what violence is. We know it's like, I can tolerate that. I can help this. We almost feel often sorry for and responsible for the emotional state of the abuser. And that is so hard because it combines with the nurturing aspect of yourself. So anyway, what else can we do? We can here, well, this comes to what we were talking about. If it's combining with the parts of yourself that are actually good parts of yourself, right? I mean, to be nurturing and to care for other people and have empathy is a good trait. And it's just misdirected when it's going toward a narcissistic, toxic person, right? And so searching for your own self-worth, finding help to work with that. I'm pretty sure I have a video on that recently too, and that's a whole long talk, finding your self-worth, but I'm going to leave it at that because it's important. Okay, and sometimes you have to say to yourself, okay, like if you're trying to be no contact and you are, just as an example, say you're no contact and you are feeling like you're gonna text them or you're gonna contact them, and it's really strong. Okay, it's not the end of the world if you don't. You don't have to have everything you want, right? Okay, knowing that it's better for you to remain no contact, holding that it is not good to have contact, because if you do, you're right, it puts you so much farther back in healing the trauma bond part. So allowing yourself to feel those feelings. I think what we're trying to do with the cognitive dissonance is avoid. We're trying to avoid what we need to feel. When you have those feelings, just let them be there. You can get on the support groups, get on SPAN, get journal to yourself, whatever you need to do. Get into the group coaching if you need it, so that there is some peer support and some coaching support, whatever you need at that point, to allow yourself to feel what you need to feel and learn how to give yourself self-care and nurturing through those feelings. We're crying out to feel what we feel, and we're telling ourselves, no, I don't want to feel this. I want to go to the source of the pain and make that source make everything all better, because that's the nature of what happens when we get the breadcrumbs, right? So avoid it, but avoid the doing of that and not the feeling of feelings. Okay. Talking it through, what we talked about, finding support, talking it through with a coach, therapist, friends that understand you, support groups, things like that, so that you get some feedback. A lot of times it's the validation plus the feedback, like, who was it? Dude, trust me, I think said earlier. That was a great example. All right. Let's see what's happening. Okay. Oops. He's hoovering your eldest kid. Is it an adult child or a child? Mo Cowboy, how to overcome gaslighting when I listen to people when they tell me what they are, defined by consequences of their actions, when those around endorse the actions. I don't understand that question. Can you simplify that for me? Or give a brief example, very brief, so because my brain is on another topic. So I will happily answer that, but I am for some reason not catching the meat of that question. The gaslighting comes from the group. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. Not catching it. Let's see. Can't concern with what we can't control, but you can't control, but you can control how you react to them. Exactly. That's exactly the point. I like that sum up better than the way I said it. Okay. Okay, this is in relation to H1. Anna was talking about being triggered by items that she saw. She said, I started thinking about it and I felt the same deep sadness. I realized, though, that I was aware that the people who were abusive are not now in my life and they have upset others with their toxicity. That's a really good realization that you had. And I think that's exactly how you work with it. You allow the new realizations to come in and your belief around the situation to change. It breaks the feeling of cognitive dissonance, number one, and it allows you to feel that sadness differently. So like instead of the deep sadness and putting blame on yourself or whatever you did, however it was before, now you felt the deep sadness and you realized something new. And I think that is the nature of healing. I think that's an excellent, actually, if you have to have a trigger, that's an excellent way to have one. Okay. I know it didn't feel good, but so then afterwards, did you create some sort of self-care for yourself to help you recover, or what happened? How long did it take to kind of feel back to yourself again? Okay. Lise, I become emotionally reactive and thus labeled crazy by the group. Okay. Here is my thoughts on that. I get this. Okay. He's saying he becomes emotionally reactive and then labeled crazy by the group of enabling destructive behaviors, which is the point of gaslighting, making the target, him, emotionally disabled. So when you're dealing with a situation where there's gaslighting, what is the number one thing we do? We gray rock, right? You gray rock the group. And how do you do that if you still want to get your point across? Simplify. Simplify your replies to very few things. Speak in a very calm, quiet tone. Simplify, businesslike. Get what you need to say out. Do not defend yourself. Do not argue. If someone interrupts you, you just say, excuse me, just a moment, and you finish what you're saying, or you let them interrupt and talk and then continue with what you were saying without going into their gaslighting distraction. You know how they do, if you're saying something and then someone is gaslighting and they're using it to distract you, don't go into the distraction. Just while they're talking, hold your thought in your head, and then when they're done, finish your thought. But really simplify. I think the less words you can use, the better. It gives less fuel and less it helps you refrain from being so emotionally reactive. Because what happens when we're emotionally reactive is we're feeding off our own emotional state, right? And we're hearing our words in our head justifying our state, and then it's a feedback loop. So calm it all down, simplify it. That's what I think. All right, does that help? I don't know. Okay, wait. Okay, I'm missing a bunch here. I'm sorry. Okay, your oldest is 17 and they're being and so you feel, Jack Lumen says he feels he needs to intervene because with the father enabler because they are effectively causing some harm emotionally to the 17-year-old, I would limit time. I mean, how much time do you spend with these people, and why do you spend as much as you do? That would be my question. I would limit time with them and limit interactions and educate the 17-year-old on how to gray rock, and that not all people have the best communication skills, and they aren't using very good you don't have to finger point and call names, but it is what it is. People like that don't communicate well. Therefore, just teaching them skills, teaching the adult, almost adult child skills to cope with people like that, rather than going to the enabler or narcissist and trying to deal with it that way, because it's not going to work. It's not going to do anything. It's just going to create friction. Okay. All right. Yes, it does move quick. And then if I'm moving at the same time, and you guys type, it jumps. So then I get lost completely. All right. I'm looking for any questions or anything about cognitive dissonance and how to help someone who is in the middle of it. There is a lot of it going on out there, and it would be nice to give people some hope and help here. Okay. Lise, okay. Oh, it just happened a few minutes ago. Okay. So this is good self-care, just kind of hanging out and expressing it and talking about it. That's good. So finding ways to, when you have a trigger like that, H1N, to you allowed yourself to process it. And I think that's really great, the way you saw the different perspective on it, because I truly believe it's perspective changes that create the most change in our lives. And that, but then what, right? So maybe after this, find some ways to give yourself some self-care. If you can take a walk, do that. I don't know where you are or what your situation is, but something to move the energy through you and breathe, and maybe a short meditation or something to help you kind of calm your nervous system down. And then any excess energy, just realize you had an adrenaline dump, and you're going to feel kind of jumpy and jittery, and whatever you feel after you have a trigger, upset, you're going to feel that anxiety, whatever. Use it to do something productive, but understand that, okay, it was just a trigger. Just like you said, that isn't in my life right now. Anyway, going to move on. Okay. All right. Okay. Looking for anything related to how do you stop trying to do everything at the same time? What do you mean? Are we talking to each other, or is that to me? I don't know. Okay. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about cognitive dissonance. We can help people. Oh, hello, Broken Wing Angel. Before I have to head out here today. So I said, let's see. Okay. At this point when you're trying to break the feeling of cognitive dissonance or break the spell it has over you, it can be really scary to think of anything different. It's sort of like we get stuck in the loop of the abuse being what we know as love and as our life. And it's hard to let go, even though that sounds, to someone who hasn't experienced it, that may sound completely like, why? But it's how it is, okay? And understand that change, it's normal to fear change at this part. It's normal to fear everything being different. It's normal to fear being alone. It's not that all of that is kind of what you got to go through. It just is part of it. So that's kind of the map, right? or the territory rather. And we'll use a different map to move through it, which is allowing yourself to feel it. So what can happen is you get these thought loops that make you want to go back, and you can't stop thinking about that other person. Break the thought loops. Tell yourself, I don't have time for this. I'm moving on. You have to get firm with yourself at a certain point, depending how newly discarded you are or whatever, however long you've been dealing with this. Obviously in the beginning, be gentle with yourself, but at a certain point, you tell yourself enough's enough and you stop. You say, I'm not doing this today, and you don't do it. It's a matter of will at a certain point to get through this, because You are in basically a brain. I think probably what happens is you've got two parts of your brain firing at the same time, obviously, and they're pulling. The thoughts they're having are just like playing tug of war with each other. So you get in there and you just stop it with another part of your brain. We have these amazing things in our heads, our brains, that really can get us through this. So ways to stop thought loops. Get active and engaged elsewhere. If you are actively engaged in what you're doing for that time period, your thoughts will be on what you're doing and it will stop the thought loops, at least for that amount of time. And those breaks that you get create new neural pathways over time and start changing the way you live your life. So focus elsewhere and find things that are interesting and focus on those things. Pay attention to what you're believing behind your emotions. Like if you're saying, oh, but they can't be as bad as I think they are. I can make it better. I can do this, and whatever you're thinking that is, you're putting self-blame and you're thinking you can fix it. Pay attention to what's underneath that. Sometimes it's other things like, oh my gosh, I'm afraid to be alone, or I've forgotten how to think for myself. They have their control. I feel like my thoughts are being controlled. There's something under it, usually another belief. If you can find that, then you're getting somewhere sometimes. It helps you break the associations. Keep educating yourself on trauma bonds and cognitive dissonance, on narcissistic abuse, on all the forms and all the tactics that are used. Keep educating yourself so that you know what you experienced was real. After last night, I made myself realize I was only letting them control my mood even when I wasn't in their presence. So I watched a funny video, got productive to reset my brain. Tamara, thank you. That is a great example of what I just said. Thank you for that, because I can't get examples quickly. Broken Wing Angel says, I missed most. We're talking about cognitive dissonance right now, and how right now we're talking about how ways to sort of override it. It's going to be there, and we have to just kind of let it be there and then override it with other things. Okay, can't pronounce this. I'm going to call you D. The worst part of cognitive dissonance is when they convince you that you deserve the abuse. And then what? Then we convince ourselves we deserve it. Yeah. And you're right. What helped you get through that? Or are you still in that space right now? How do you stop doing everything at once when you're going in circles? Does that make sense? I think so. That's like a hyperdrive kind of feeling, or a hyper. Do you mean like trying to do a ton of things at once and you're going in circles and nothing's actually getting done? I'm going to let you reply and then I'll come back to that. Okay. Okay. Oops. Okay. And Tamara also did meditation, continued from above. Perfect. I tried the act of pinning my thoughts, and when they start to race, that seems to help some, but it took a long time. I've had H1 Anna says, I've had cognitive dissonance since last Friday when someone told me I have black and white thinking. Huh, interesting. Okay. Miss Kim, narc free, you and me, hello. I would scream when it got in my head. I screamed he was not real and was an illusion, and read a lot and joined classes to keep busy. That's great. Yeah, that's what I mean. You have to get a little bit louder than the emotion that you're feeling in your own head. Sometimes it's just a big firm no, I'm not thinking this right now, whatever it is, to stop those thoughts. Broken Wing Angel, wow, I'm always there. I can't think for myself. My children guide me. I can't handle the thought of my children leaving me, especially with my grandson, the prize. So in that statement right there, my suggestion is to take the can'ts out and change them with, I find it difficult. because the can't is limiting you from your own experience of thinking for yourself. Does that make sense? And yes, it's a difficult place. And also with that, when you're in that position where that's kind of a little bit different than cognitive dissonance, that's more just the effects of narcissistic abuse and having our minds basically having everything, having been told what to do constantly, right? And having it been manipulated so that we're doing other people's bidding all the time. Start to do things for yourself that are very small, like take yourself to the grocery store and shop for 3 items that you like, or, tiny things. Make decisions that aren't going to, push you over the edge, tiny decisions, and pay attention when you're doing it to realize that you just did that. So I know it sounds silly because they're really small, but it doesn't matter. It's the repeating of things that are positive that help you gain your confidence to be positive and to do it. Okay. Well, Cowboy says, I go in circles when overtaken by cognitive dissonance. It's hard to stop and do the grounding exercises. Yet when I do stop and do the grounding, it helps stop the circles. It does. It is hard to stop. It's got a whole momentum to it. And catching it, I think sometimes we have to feel these things a little bit so that we can learn to catch it. And then use that big loud no inside your head. Not doing this now. Nope. And then move on. Okay. Okay. Let's see. H1 Anna says, I felt like there was something deeply wrong with me and that I was being put under the microscope. He was saying this after I gave my opinion on something. Right. And that just makes you full of self-doubt, doesn't it? So, finding ways to recognize when what you say matters, talking to people and watching their expressions when they do validate you and make you feel heard, and also hearing yourself, like maybe writing down some thoughts and then rereading them. And if you don't like the way it's worded, reword it. It's not because you're wrong. Maybe you're, if I word it that way, and then work your, you know what I'm saying here? Like work your thoughts for yourself so that onto paper as you write something in a journal or something, and reread it and give yourself some credit for what you said. You got to reverse the programming, right? The chats are enlightening. Oh, good. Okay. Oh, it's jumping. All right. Okay. I don't see any more. Okay. Any other questions you guys have or you want to talk about that is related to cognitive dissonance? And then if not, is there anything you want to talk about that is unrelated to cognitive dissonance before we end here very shortly? I think I am done with what I had. Let's see. Yes, that's all I had written down for now. I mean, it's a tricky one. If you try to research how to heal cognitive dissonance, it's kind of mumbo jumbo. Doesn't make sense because it's really, you have to override your thoughts. It isn't a matter of, there's like no magic way or steps that you can kind of take. It really has to do with disbelieving what your emotions are telling you. And even if you don't believe what your emotions are telling you, like a lot of people are full of cognitive dissonance and they fully know, they know what's right and they're doing what's right, but it still hurts. And I think it has to do with stopping the thought process, stopping the emotional thought process, if that makes sense, and telling yourself you're done with those. Because the truth is, my experience is that realizing it in different ways. So realizing what went down, but from different perspectives, is what helps me see that what I know to be true is true, and there is no way to change it, no matter what I feel. And therefore, what I'm feeling is kind of not serving me. Does that make sense? It's really hard to talk about this topic and how to work with it without having like actual verbal feedback here. Is there a lost that is only lost? I journal, but I'm always confused. I don't understand what that means. I'm lost. I don't understand. Broken wing angel. Can you say that differently? Or maybe I'm just not understanding. Okay. Going to guess that gaslighting is an intentional tactic to turn up cognitive dissonance and get us separated from our intuition. I don't think it is. Honestly, Jack Lumen, I don't think most of what happens is intentional. I think the intent is self-serving, and that is all. I think most of the tactics used are the way a child tantrums. They are go-to responses. They're similar to the way Mo Cowboy was describing having an emotional reaction that sends him into a deeper emotional or a more intense emotional reaction, and then it comes out verbally. I think that's similar. I think all people function similarly. It's just that narc's intention and their lack of empathy. A narcissist has a different intention and lack of empathy, which makes the ways they are abusive seem intentional. Does that make sense? Like, I think there are people out there who do it intentionally and they're like, oh yeah, I'm totally going to do that. And they do it or whatever. But I think for the most part, I've seen one person personally where I know they were intentionally manipulating. Most other people that I've seen who manipulate that way, it's not intentional. It's their defense mechanism. And it's their go-to way to protect their ego and hide the being accountable from, like, they can't be accountable to themselves and they also can't be accountable to other people. So does that make sense? Okay. Dana and Andrew were talking about yes, he says, Dana and Angie were talking about this earlier, that a narcissist has an underdeveloped ego. Underdeveloped ego? Right, and an overimportance placed on it. Okay, so they respond like toddlers. Right. Which makes the intention, Jen Archer is saying, which makes the intention no longer empathic, but lacking of. Correct. Well, if someone's, it's always intent, right? If we live our lives we have interactions based on intent with other people. We don't want nothing. We all want something, whether it be connection, communication, we're wanting something. And what they want is self-driven and self-serving. So that's the intent behind every action. And if they need to get their way, they'd use tactics that get their way, not because they're thinking, I'm going to gaslight now, and they gaslight. They do it. It's automatic, I believe, for most of them. For most people who, yeah. I have to learn that my self-esteem and self-view is not dependent on his view or opinion of me or anyone else's view, for that matter. It is how you perceive yourself that matters the most. That's the belief in yourself is where you can find freedom. And yeah. So, and I think I have, like I said, I think there's a video on self-esteem a while back. It might help you just kind of watching that H1Anna and seeing if there's anything that sounds good. And bring questions if you do have questions about it, but leave them in the comments. I get to them. Okay. Where are we? Okay. I'm sorry. Now I'm just, I always hit, I think I must, I'm going to say I must be at 44 minutes. I hit 44 minutes and I start to space out and just read the chat like I'm in chat room, not on live video. Okay. So another thing I want to talk about, I talked about yesterday. This is, I wish I'd put it in the beginning because if people who don't watch to the end, it may be helpful to them to hear it. And anyway, so when we are in love, when we are in a relationship with someone, we have different parts of our brain firing at one time. Okay. We have the part that is deep in the core of the It's basically the part of your brain that is, they call the reptilian brain. It is the part that operates or is responsible for our heartbeat and things like that. It's not logic. There's no words. There's no emotion there. It's just basic reaction. That's firing off when you have an attraction to someone for whatever reason, and you're singling them out as a partner. Okay, so when you're with, and then the other parts of your brain that are firing are in your limbic system and your neural cortex. And so when you have a situation where you've got a lot of tension or a breakup or something, you've got that all firing at one time. The limbic system will, I believe that's the emotional part, yes, where you, that's probably where the cognitive dissonance is firing, as well as every other emotion is telling your brain, it's being stimulated. And then the neural cortex is where all the logic's going on and saying, hey, this is what they did to you, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, these three things going on at one time in your head, what was the point of it? When that deeper part of your brain that has no, that is in the reptilian part of the brain, the part that regulates the heartbeat, fires off, it floods your brain with dopamine, which makes you need to seek more of anything. So understanding that this is going on and you've got all these chemicals going on and reinforcing what you are, reinforcing the situation. So if you take that and understand that, then you start to override the thoughts, the feeling thoughts, the ones that are telling you, stay with this person, he can change, she can change, whatever. Then you can use that dopamine response more effectively, I think, if you start changing those thoughts and look for ways to feel different things. If you're like really needing to go into remembering the good times, start remembering the bad times and let yourself feel it. A lot of times we're avoiding it. And that way, all that give me more is responding to that instead of responding to, oh, but it was so great when, you know what I'm saying? Like, use the chemicals that are already there. It's the same with using the adrenaline. When you're pumped full of adrenaline, go do something and use it instead of sitting there feeling terrible. I don't know if any of that made sense, but probably should have written it down first for that one, because that's all like technical stuff. Okay. The part that makes me stare like that comes from those narcissistic people. I have this funny, like, the way my brain works is I have like bursts. I'm like a sprinter. And then when I'm done, I'm kind of just done. And then I can pick back up, but it's for everything. It's across the board. I would do that with photography. I would go take photos and be doing a photo shoot and be about 40 minutes in, and then just boom, the creative energy just gone. I'd just be staring. So same thing, different medium. It's okay. James says, write down as many bad times and things said as you can for later so that you can read and be like, oh my God. Yep. Well, Cowboy says it makes sense. I'm so glad. Okay. I'm no longer in love with someone else. So now using a different part of my brain to take care of me. Yes, exactly. And using, when you have those triggers, using the energy that comes up and the chemicals that come up to help you rewire your brain. And I am no doctor, I'm just saying what makes sense to me when I hear these, when I hear the, what am I trying to say? When I understand what's actually going on from a clinical perspective, and then I try to apply it to what I think makes sense from where we exist, right? Which is functioning with all of this stuff. Isn't the reptilian part of the brain the part that makes you attracted to that stare? Yes. It's the part that makes you basically just, from what I understand, I should link the TED Talk that I saw on it. It's the part that makes you like pinpoint a mate. Does that make sense? Instead of just everyone in the room is attractive or no one in the room is attractive, it singles out. When it fires off, it makes you hone in on one person. or a person at the time, right? Not just one person. It's not saying it like makes you monogamous. It makes you hone in at that time to that person. So, but it doesn't really, it probably is attracted to the stare because it probably is like sparked from that. Anyway. Okay. We're starting to space out. I'm starting to space out. All right, you guys. I appreciate you being here. And as always, I wish you the best. And I am going to head out tonight. Thank you so much. Hit subscribe if you have not done so. If you enjoyed this, please hit the like button and leave any comments that you would like to in the main comment section. For anyone who might be going through this, leave them a little bit of support maybe, or if you have questions or if you think of something else, leave it in there and I'll reply. And take care. I will see you later. Bye-bye.